Okay, thank you everybody for those who have already shared, and for everybody for coming today, and thank you for the questions that have been sent in. We will look to try and keep it sharp, as we've been doing well for time, but then Neil, I'm just joking a little bit. Steve, oh. I can stand here. Chair. Okay, first question, and this one's open. What would you say to someone who's seen a lot of children grow up in Christian education and fall away, and they're feeling particularly demoralised by it? What would your encouragement be? What would your counsel be?
I know I just spoke, but in part of my talk, there was going to be a testimony about this, but I literally turned that page around because I saw your eyes, Andy. But, so you will get kids that will fall away, but you still planted a seed, and they come back. So there's an amazing testimony of the first ever pupil at Manor Fields Christian School to get expelled, got expelled from behavior, really bad behavior. He knows it. He tells you that today. He gives his story today. And today, he has now come back to the Lord. He came out of the faith, came back, serving the Lord, speaking, preaching, and supporting Christian education, and already looking to take his kids to Christian school, and wants to help Unite for Education. So they come back, and I think that's the amazing thing, is that keep praying and never stop, because yes, some of them will fall away because it's not perfect, but they'll come back.
Anybody else want to add to that? No?
I think it's important for us to remember as parents that Christian education does not save our children. They're saved by Jesus Christ. And we sow the seeds, we disciple them, we train them up, but ultimately their salvation is between them and the Lord. And there will be young adults, teenagers who will not, they will fall away. And we pray and we seek and we walk in faith, believing that God will return the prodigals, but that our faith is in Christ, not in us. We can't save our children, and we can't take that burden on us to save our children, because then it's a salvation by works and not by grace.
Yeah, ultimately, yes, it's by grace. It's the same with the preacher. You know, you don't, you could tie yourselves in knots if, we do look for fruit, but it's in God's hands. We trust him. We sow the seed in trust.
Okay, well, there's someone saying, my local church leader says setting up a Christian school would be very divisive in our community, financially and socially. How would you respond to that?
I would seek to respond with grace, I think.
Yeah. Just a disclaimer, I didn't come up with the question.
I know who did.
Yeah, it's difficult. I would say, there's some mixed up thinking coming from the pulpit in that regard, and it's sad. But ultimately, it's a reflection of, and part of the reason why our country is it has the problems that it has. It's a reflection of what's going on in the church and the deficiencies that are there. So, pray for him, pray for the preacher, pray for the pastor. I think that's the best thing you can do, that Lord would open his eyes.
Just very briefly, I'd be tempting to say I've never heard a pastor say there's a real problem in our church. Half the kids go to one school and half go to another. I really don't know how to solve this crisis of division in my church. I've never heard a pastor say that. So why it should suddenly apply once one of the schools is a Christian school, I really don't know. So.
Definitely pray for the pastor. Another question is, has anyone any experience of using education as a mission, for example, offering tutoring or after-school clubs in a Christian education hub? No?
Kind of. Raising arrows.
No, that's a Christian co-op. No, but I've wanted to. It's been something that I've felt would be a really great way for the church to reach out, especially within high schools, that a lot of kids are really struggling because of all the so much of teachers' time is taken up with behaviour, and then kids fall behind academically. And I think it would be an amazing vision for a church to run with, to set up maybe after-school clubs to help tutor kids who are struggling with like almost like homework clubs. I know our church, my church personally, they did a thing pre-COVID where they had a lot of grace to get into the local high school, and a group of people from the church were going into the high school at lunchtime and doing like basically a homework club in the school at lunchtime. But since I don't think it's never been revisited after COVID.
Do we think there's any scope for something like that to happen?
I think there is, just from I've got my do stuff with Arise, but I also do private tutoring, and my private tutoring pupils are coming, and they're trying to get through the exams, but because of the issues in the classroom, things they've not had, there's so many gaps. And so I think there is that need, and I think it'd be a really great, if for any churches that are looking for a way of reaching out into the community in that way, it's a really meaningful way for families, it's a real need in families, that would be a great place to go and see if that they could build it out.
Another question that's come in is, what is the legal difference between a school that requires registered teachers and an education hub where homeschoolers make their own curriculum? So what is the legal difference between a homeschooling hub and a registered school?
As far as I know, the number of hours. So we do, out with Arise, I'm home educating my children. I'm involved in a co-op, and we come together and we do learning in community, much like Hilltop, but we actually set it up with high schoolers as our main vision, and we have a full day of classes and learning, but because of the number of hours that we have, we're not a school, so we just are under the radar, and all the parents go home and they do their own education the rest of the week. I think Jane's church, you did a home ed co-op similar, where you would meet regularly and kids would bring their work, but you were like, it was almost like a learning hub co-op.
We only did it for a few months, but because the families were quite far apart, we decided to go back to just meet monthly. But yeah, that's a great idea for a church to do, yeah.
I think it's to do with, I can't remember the number of hours, I've looked it up previously, but if you have
15. In Scotland, there's no, yeah.
There's no part-time schooling thing. And so it's just the fact that parent-led rather than registered with Education Scotland.
But if parents do too many hours together, you then become an illegal school.
Yeah.
So you need to know the number of hours that you're doing as a parent-led. The number of hours are below that threshold, and then you can be a learning hub or a kind of a co-op type setting. If you go over those number of hours, or the parents are no longer in charge of the children's education, you're kind of veering into illegal school territory, and you don't want to do that.
Dave, do you know more, or do you want to say anything else? Yeah.
the mic.
There is an official number of hours out there, but I can't.
So we looked into this for classical conversations, and the main difference is, as Emma just referenced at the end, as I understand it, is who's responsible for the children. So if it's a delegated activity, which is when we drop off, then that's when we get into all sorts of dangerous legal territory. But as long as the parents remain responsible for their children at all times, i.e. it's not a drop-off, it's not delegated, then it's a service for adults, and adults can make their own informed choices, and there's way less regulation on things for adults than there are for things for children. So that's out of classical conversations, we've got round it that way, in a sense, is that we are for the parents, and a lot of the home ed co-ops would be for the parents to come and get support in home educating their children. So it's that responsibility thing that you mentioned, I think.
Thank you. This one to Steve. What are the difficulties, the stumbling blocks, the challenges that Manifields have faced? Maybe this question will go to Melbourne Box as well afterwards, in trying to get a high school started from S1 to S6?
Well, there's been quite a lot, so if I've missed any out, my colleagues can chip things in. So one of the things we have to do is work out what curriculum we're going for. So do we go with SQA? That means we'll have to get an exam centre status, so there's some loopholes there. Hoops, I should say, to go through. Maybe we can find some loopholes, that'd be quite good. So yeah, the curriculum, we want to let parents know that we're going in the right direction, so we need to give them a sense of, we know what we're doing and they're going to invest with us. So, just making sure everything's in place. So it's going to cost money because we're going to need more staff. How do we do that? So maybe part-time. We will need staff with who are registered with the GTCS, yep. Which is not all educators are. Maybe some have retired and then they've got to get put the £75 fee in and all the other bits that go with that. We've got size as well. So some places, if we're going to seniors, we need a bigger, more toilet facilities, and is our place going to be big enough? It's not a problem for us just now. It'd be nice if it was. Other things, I think it's just a lot of it's about money, because the staff are going to take a lot of for the salary side, and so with fees, you've got to adjust all of that as well. And I think going back to fees as well, most families are struggling financially, and to put kids into a private school, which we are, when you hear fees, the shutters go down. So, that's an issue as well. There may be others. Have I missed any yet?
Thanks. Yeah, I think for high school, it's the level when parents feel the need most acutely. Some parents, rightly or wrongly, they think the local primary school is maybe not too bad. The high school, wow, we don't want to send our kids there. You see that in the independent sector in general. The further you go up through the age groups, the more parents want to send their kids to high school. But the challenge for Christian high schools is it's harder to make a high school work on a small scale, because the facilities, because the specialist staff. And I think the potential customers, are you allowed to use that word here? The potential families who would send their kids to these schools, again, rightly or wrongly, I believe often what they want to see is what they think looks like a proper high school, with rows of classrooms, laboratories, specialist teachers, you name it. So it's a high school, really, in some regards. It's best if you can start with a bang and be a big thing, because that reassures people that this is a proper school. So I'm confident sending my kids here for these key exam years, university entrance, etc. So then that's the big challenge. I think starting small and growing, great, I'm right behind it. And I think parents who are very, very committed to Christian education might look at that and think, yeah, we're on board for that. But I think there's a much wider group of parents, Christian parents, who would maybe need the reassurance of seeing something a bit more like what they think, rightly or wrongly, is a proper school. And I think that's the challenge. And a lot of it does come down to finance to get the thing going. And once the ball's rolling, things can be self-sustaining, but it's just quite a hump to get over, to get a high school like that going.
John?
I think, yeah, probably the biggest hurdle is finding the right staff. That's quite a challenge because certainly us in Glasgow, we don't pay the same sort of salaries as what you get in the States. But God has provided. We're looking at, we doubled in size. We started S1 and S2 together. We've doubled in size when we added S3, and we'll probably grow by another 70 or 80%, I think. And we'll almost double again for S4. But we require a maths teacher for that. So if you know any maths teachers.
Feeling called by the Lord. Okay, kind of on the back of that question, someone's put in, practically and financially, is the way forward then to make a Scottish online secondary Christian school? Would that be a viable option?
There's online stuff already. Emmanuel there is online stuff, and I think to just try and do a Scottish one, it's kind of like reinventing the wheel in a lot of ways. Certainly, we're looking at a secondary starting up in Inverness soon. I expect us to do a lot of cooperation and use, online stuff for that, sharing between our schools. But if you're starting from scratch, Emmanuel would look at.
Okay, this one's for Kate. What question?
Oh no, can you believe it?
What are some of the highlights you've experienced with the youth that you've connected with at the variety of schools that you've been in?
Oh, I think the increasing being invited back into schools is such an affirmation for me that the schools and the teachers are happy with the material. I mean, I've seen a really beautiful thing. So we, aside from sort of the PSE lessons that I do, we also do tours around schools where we will pick a particular topic that we'll deliver in a school, but really we just want to talk about Jesus. So we did a tour a couple of years ago around high schools in Stirling and Falkirk, and the way we work it is we deliver lessons to all the year groups in the school, and then we invite them to a concert that we do at the end of the week, where at that concert we'll share the gospel. And we did this tour in 4 schools, in Falkirk and Stirling, and off the back of the tour, we were in one high school, and there'd been a new minister at the Baptist church there, and he'd come in to the tour with us. So he'd been in the school the full day, got to meet the staff, the head teacher, and we then went in and delivered. He came in with me to deliver all the lessons that I delivered in the school, and he is now going in with his church every Thursday into their sort of nurture base in the school, and they're doing gardening and they're doing cookery with the kids. They're making food, and then the church are then doing a feeding families on a Thursday where they feed families in the local area, and they're getting 70, 80 people coming along every Thursday to meet together, eat together, share together, and it's just been this really beautiful partnership of the church and the school, and me getting to be part of that as well, which is just really beautiful. So yeah, that's been a super highlight for me.
Another question is, who are the Christians in the education departments that are shaping the curriculum? Can we contact them, and how can we pray for them, which is yes, but how can we support them? Do we know do we know of any Christians who are in there shaping the curriculum of schools? Is there a way of contacting them to support them, to pray for them?
Do we know of Christians that's shaping the curriculum? Because, so, I know there's a group that I've been invited to be part of that meet up to make the laws, the guidance for home education in Scotland. And there is one other Christian there, but I don't know them. But I got invited, and hopefully to have a say and to stand up for the truth. which is very hard. So I just say, you know, all these people that are in government that say they're Christians, not living it out properly, because they are the ones that are signing the paperwork and allowing the stuff to come in. But I don't know exactly in the department itself who's Christian, but we just got to pray for all of them. And contacting, you got, they, do they listen? I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard thing. It's really, really difficult. But we just got to keep pushing and trying to get in there, and seeing what we can do. But you never know. Prayer, what God can do. Get a meeting with your MPs, whatever. Try. You never know. It could make a difference. Only God knows, right? We don't. It's a hard question. Yes, yeah, Megan.
Thank you. Do get in touch with CV Scotland about questions like that. We do have contacts within the different authorities that we work with. Yes, influence. There are times when we can submit quite extensive paperwork in response to consultations with the government. I didn't mention that earlier, but do pick up our address and get in touch, and we can put you in touch with different people, or encourage you, you know, to be able to have a say in those things.
Please do get the contact details for CV and all the exhibitors, please, and know what's happening. It will really help.
I would just say that, you know, I've had a lot of interaction with Education Scotland. We obviously have to be registered with them, with the school, but to date we've only had support from them. They've not put, you know, barriers or problems in our way, and that's over the past 10 years of the school in Glasgow. They've been supportive rather than anything else. That may change, but it's not what you expect when we think about what's going on in Scotland today, but that has been our experience so far.
Well, while you've got the mic,
Yeah, just a contrasting perspective on Education Scotland. I mean, they did their best to get me struck off and fired when I was teaching. But I think an organisation like Education Scotland, they tend to operate on complaints. They don't go and look at a school and think off their own bat, say, oh, we're not happy with what's going on here. But when they get a complaint, that's when they'll swing into action. And they will pick on the one school that happens to have had a complaint. But I'd say about all these issues there, I mean, it is possible to influence people. It is possible to influence people who are involved in this process. But ultimately, it's a matter of political policy, the nature of the curriculum, the values of education. So really on election day, a group of people are elected to run education, and they're going to run it according to those values. And we can try and influence as much as we can then. But in a very real sense, to some degree, the die is cast, I think, when the people are put in place and they're given the reins of education. It's going to reflect their values.
thank you. This one is more directed to the Christian school, so it'll be Stephen and John. What expertise and support is there for children who may have learning difficulties or need some extra care?
Yeah, we can help by the smaller classes. So, for example, in maths, we have in our school we have a young man who's educational needs, and so we would help out with that, and that could be personalised maths, for example, and other more intensely provided help in other subjects. Parents can come in as well, which is good for a parent-run school. That's what we do there. We do miss out on that support from the sort of psychologist side of things. So when it comes to things like diagnosis, maybe we're picking up something on some sort of spectrum type thing. Sometimes it's difficult then to work out, because that we don't have an ed psych available, as I was saying, and then it's up to the parents maybe then to get an appointment with a doctor, but we know how much that can take times as far as the support that the government's giving. So that can be an issue. But generally, smaller classes help a lot, and we with our we're teachers, so we know how to help in most circumstances.
Things are a wee bit different in private schools, small private schools. We just don't have necessarily the same resources that they have in the state. So there are limits. We do have a number of children in our schools with additional support needs of varying degrees, but there are limits because it's really contingent upon the resources available within the school, and we ultimately have to balance the education of all the children, and so there's limits sometimes sadly to what we're able to do at the moment, but largely that's ultimately down to finance. If we had an unlimited amount of finance, we'd be able to help a lot more.
Okay, we've got time for another couple of questions. I'm looking at Stuart to see one more. Okay. Well, you're next to the mic, Neil, so I'll finish with you.
Sorry?
You're next to the mic, so I'll let
Oh.
you take it for the last question.
What's the last question?
We're going to find out. So, what are the future plans, hopes and dreams for Unite for Education?
I know, Tracy, I think the best, because it is quite in-depth, that question. I know you said, John said he spoke to you. Maybe if Steve, John and Stephen can come together and have a discussion with you regarding that, and we can go more into it. And yeah, do you want to just say it?
The registration process, the GTCS registered, to be a GTCS registered teacher is becoming actually harder unless you're actually in school with a state head teacher giving you a reference. And so I think it's going to be one of the biggest challenges for Christian schools going forward is to find GTCS registered teachers. I'm just interested in knowing if there's any way that we could come together a bit more in Unite for Education to sort of campaign for a model which is much more like England, where independent schools are allowed to choose their own teachers rather than having to go to the state. I was just interested to know experiences. That's one thing that schools might stop because they'll
We can definitely try and campaign. We can definitely do something to get, if we get more people, that will like to do it. I'll definitely do it. Yeah.
The problem is that state control and increasing state control is a direction of travel north and south of the border. It's only a recent thing that they took into law, and they changed it about 6 or 7 years ago, I think it was, in Scotland, where you had to have GTCS registration. So now, yes, all our teachers have. We obviously spoke about your problem earlier. Starting a new school, if you had to gain registration as a teacher, that's a problem. You need oversight, you need to spend a certain number of hours under supervision. We have in Glasgow, we have multiple staff going through and have put multiple staff through teacher training, their probationary year. But it's more difficult if you're not established already.
What was the question?
So, just as a pause,
Yes, yeah.
what are the plans, hopes and dreams for Unite for Education?
Being more visible, getting more known, standing for Christian education here in Scotland, awakening the church somehow, getting the funding for all of us here together, where I would love to be able to get funding where I can say, Arise, here's £1,000 for you this week. Here, Manor-fields, here's £10,000 for you this month. I would love to be doing that.
Andy, here's 10 grand.
Nah, not you. But yeah, so that's the hope, is to really awakening the church, standing, being more visible. We got events coming up almost said Providence, in Stonaway. Got events coming up in Stonaway, Inverness, Aberdeen again, and a few things coming up. So we're trying to get everywhere, trying to get more known, and wherever I go, even if I'm representing just Unite for Education, I'll have every single organization that's here, and school and home group, I'll have their information with me to pass it on to people so they know what's available in Scotland. So bringing awareness of all that's available, being that, being visible. But my thing, the main thing today, I think right now is igniting that, we got to ignite, we got to renew, get that purpose, get that passion back, but awakening the church, really trying to do that.
Can we show appreciation for everybody here and everybody who's spoken today?